All going to assemble devotees, Hare Krishna. All going to assemble devotees, Hare Krishna. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udiraye nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki krishnaya vasudevaya devaki nandanaya cha nanda gopa kumaraya govindaya namo namah. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji. Welcome you all to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam study, chapter by chapter summary. So today we will be discussing chapter 5. Yeah. So let me share my screen. We will recite this verse and then we will discuss further. So this is the verse number 5, verse number 40, chapter 5. So 1-5-40. I'll share my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tvamapi dhabra shrutavishrutam vibho samapateyena vidam vibhutsitam samapateyena vidam vibhutsitam prakhyahi dukkhe muhurarditha atmanam prakhyahi dukkhe muhurardita atmana sanklesh nivaran ushanti nanyatha sanklesh nirvanam ushanti nanyatha. Word by word translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Tvam, your good soul, api also, adhabra vast, shruta Vedic literatures, vishrutam have heard also, vibho of the Almighty, samapete satisfied, yen by which, vidam of the learned, bubhutsitam who always desire to learn transcendental knowledge, prakhyahi describe, dukkhai by miseries, muhu always, ardita atmanam suffering mass of people, sanklesha sufferings, nirvanam mitigation, ushanti na do not get out of, anyatha by other means. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Please hear. Shri Nārada Muni from practical experience definitely asserts that the pastimes, that the prime solution of all problems of material work is to broadcast very widely the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord. There are 4 classes of good men and there are 4 classes of bad men also. The 4 classes of good men acknowledge the authority of the Almighty God, and therefore such good men, when they are in difficulty, when they are in need of money, when they are advanced in the knowledge, and when they are inquisitive to know more and more about God, intuitively take shelter of the Lord. As such, Nārada ji advises Vyāsadeva to broadcast the transcendental knowledge of God in terms of the vast Vedic knowledge which he had already attained. As far as the bad men are concerned, they are also 4 in number. Those who are simply addicted to the mode of progressive, fruitive work and thus are subjected to the accompanying miseries. Those who are simply addicted to vicious work for sense satisfaction and so suffer the consequence. Those who are materially very much advanced in knowledge but who suffer because they do not have the sense to acknowledge the authority of the Almighty Lord. And the class of men who are known as atheists and who therefore purposely hate the very name of God, although they are always in difficulty. Shri Nārada ji advised Vyāsadeva to describe the glories of the Lord just to do good to all 8 classes of men, both good and bad. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is therefore not meant for any particular class of men or sect. It is for the sincere soul who actually wants his own welfare and peace of mind. Let's do Mangalacharan and then we will discuss further. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamlam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitantam Sajivam Savadhetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vyāsadeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhuter mahadbhiryayima puro vibho Nirmayashete yadamosha purusha Bhunte gunansho dashatmakam Solank srishta bhagavan vachamsi me Shri Krishna sharanam sharanaagatam Katha amritam satat pibatam Bhakti Vedanta Marga Panthanam Sarvalok Rishi Deva Janma Prasannam Sarvalok Rishi Deva Janma Prasannam. Hare Krishna Prabhuji and Mataji, once again very welcome to our Saturday evening Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam service. I seek your blessings so that I'm able to glorify Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. I'm able to glorify Srila Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada, and may the right words come at the right time. Please bless me. I really seek your blessings. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from chapter 5, and the chapter 5 is titled Nārada's instructions on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam for Vyāsadeva. Narada's instructions on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam for Vyāsadeva. So what had happened, Prabhuji Matai, just to recap, as we discussed in the first 3 chapters, there were a set of questions asked. And one of the questions that Shaunakadi Rishi had asked was that, Bruhi Yogeshware Krishne Brahmane Dharmavarmani Brahmane Dharmavarmani Swam Kastam Adhuno Upete Dharma Kam Sharanam Gata. That now that Lord Shri Krishna, he has gone back to his abode, dharma, which shelter, where has dharma gone, and whose shelter has dharma taken? So that was the one question. And then in response to that question, Sud Goswamiji answered their question, and then he starts glorifying Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and he tells them that this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, so he says that idam Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Puranam, Brahma Sammitam. So this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is a Purana, its name is Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and it is the incarnation of Supreme Personality of God. And then he says, Uttam Shloka Charitam Chakar Bhagavan Rishi. And then he's referring to Srila Vyāsadeva, that Bhagavan Rishi. He has written the charit, the activities, the leelas, the pastimes of the Uttam Shlok, the Supreme Lord who is glorified by the chants poetry, by the best of the words. So Srila Vyāsadeva has compiled those pastimes into this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And then he goes on to say that Tad idam grahyam asar, that this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam he passed on to his son, who is Atmavatam Varam, who is the best among the self-realized souls. So it is passed on to Shukdev Goswami, who is best among the realized souls. And at the same time, he also says that this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is now, so he says that Sarva Vede Itihasanam Saram Samudhritam. So all the Ved, all the Itihas, all the Puranas, so this is the cream. And cream, twice he repeats the word Saram Samudhritam. In the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the cream of all the scriptures has been assimilated by Srila Vyāsadeva, who passed it on to his son Shukdev Goswami. And then Sud Goswami says, in that assembly, I was also there, and I heard the glories of, I heard Shukdev Goswami speak Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, who was sitting on the bank of Ganges, fast unto death. And then he says that same Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, I am going to repeat to you. And very important word, he says, Yatha Dhitam, as I have heard, Yatha Dhitam, Yatha Mati, as I have heard, as it is, and as I have realized. So Dhitam as in he has understood, and Mati as in based on his realization, what he heard. So he's saying, I'm going to repeat that same to you, to the Shaunakadi Rishi. And when he said that, now coming to the last week's class, we discussed now these Rishis, Shaunakadi Rishi, they had another series of questions. Now they got inquisitive. They wanted to know about Shukdev Goswami. They wanted to know about Vyāsadeva ji. They wanted to know about Parikshit Maharaj. So three, like I said, three persons or three people. So one is who is compiler of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, is Srila Vyāsadeva. One who spoke Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, who is Shukdev Goswami, and the third who is heard Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is Parikshit Maharaj. There were many other attendees who listened to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam when Shukdev Goswami spoke, but the primary listener was Parikshit Maharaj. So these rishis, then they were asking more questions. So they first start by asking about Vyāsadeva. So they are asking, their question was, Kasmin yuge parvartoyam, sthane vakena hetuna kutah sanchoditah Krishna kritvan muni, kritvan sanghitam muni. So they saying, Kasmin yuge, in what yug this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, this appeared, parvarteyam, in which yug it was, sthaneva, at what place, hetuna, what was the purpose, and kutah sanchoditah Krishna. Krishna is, Srila Vyāsadeva is addressed as Krishna as well. So he's saying, on whose inspiration did Vyāsadeva wrote this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? So that they asked that question. And then Sud Goswami describes to them the birth of Srila Vyāsadeva. And then he says, Srila Vyāsadeva, from the very beginning, he was working for the welfare of all the living entities. And then he says, Paravaragna Sar Rishi. Yeah, that Rishi, Paravaragna, who can see the past and the future, who can see all the material and the spiritual, yeah, who knew everything. So he could see what was going to happen. Paravaragna Sar Rishi, Kalena. Yeah, Kalena, and then Avyakt Ramhasa, the Kal, the time which is Avyakt, which you can't see, which is very subtle. So time is moving every second. Now what we 1 second before that we had, now it's gone. So like this, the time is Avyakt. It is just going. You know, we just celebrated Happy New Year. We just had a New Year. So very nice shlok in the second canto. You know, Shaunaka Rishi, when they asked him the question, so they are saying to Sud Goswami that Ayur Harati Vai Pumsam Uddan Astam Chayannaso. Yeah, Tasya Rite Yat Shano Nita Uttam Shloka Varte. So he says, Ayur Harati Vai Pumsam. The living entities, their age is stolen away. He is using the word Harati. Harati means taken away, but the important point is without your knowledge. You know, when Harini, taken away without your knowledge. So your Ayu is being taken away without your knowledge by rising and setting of the sun. Uddan astam chiyannaso. Except those, tasya rite yat shanonite. Except those who are involved, engaged in the Uttam Shloka Varte. So Supreme Personality of Godhead is also, one of his name is Uttam Shlok, who is glorified by the chants poetry, by the best of the words. Yeah. So people who are engaged in the glorification of the Supreme Lord, their age is not stolen away. But for other living entities, their age is stolen away because they are heading towards another cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. They are going to go into another body and then just go through this cycle again and again. Whereas the devotees, they don't have to go through this birth cycle, old age, and disease, who are engaged in the Uttam Shloka Varta. So our life is stolen away. So Srila Vyāsadeva, he could see Kalen Avyakt Ramhasa. Avyakt is which is not apparent, and Ramhasa is the force. By the force of the time he could see. And what he could see? He see Yuga Dharma Vyatikaram. Yeah. Vyatikaram means as in things are not falling in order. The things are not happening as they should be happening. You know, there are different, the order has changed, bad omens, etc. So all those things are happening. Yuga Dharma Vyatikaram. So that the religion of that yuga is not being followed, or the living entities of that yuga, they are not following the religious principles. And then Vyatikaram, then everything becomes imbalanced. Like we're seeing now, we have these so many natural calamities, the flood, the drought, the COVID, the tsunami. So all of these are because we are not following the Yug Dharma, Prabhuji Mataji. That is why all these calamities are happening. But if we start, I think I mentioned to you earlier also, Srila Prabhupada once shared in Calcutta, when Prabhupada was young, at that time Prabhupada was saying there was some pandemic within the whole country. But there were devotees who were going around and they were performing Sankirtan at the places, at the houses of the devotees. Srila Prabhupada, remember, Prabhupada said he was only 3 or 4 years old, very little. He said, I could only come up to their knees. The people, they came to his house also and they did Harinam Sankirtan. And after some time, that calamity was reduced. So that is the potency of Harinam. So Srila Vyāsadeva, he could see that, these calamities are coming. Yuga Dharma Vyatikaram. Praptam Bhuvi Yuge. So on Bhuvi as in on this earth. So he could see that, these calamities are coming. And what were the signs of those calamities? Then he also describes, Sud Goswami is speaking to the Shaunaka Rishi. He's saying what he saw forthcoming. It hasn't come, but he saw forthcoming what is going to happen. And he saw forthcoming Bhuta Nam Cha Bhavan, Bhautika Nam Cha Bhavana. To the living entities, also to the non-living entities, the changes were happening. Now, for example, yesterday I saw a video coming on WhatsApp, and there was a worm in the banana. Now, can you believe how a worm got into banana? The fruits are getting contaminated. There are worms in mangoes. Outside, mango looks perfectly fine. The moment you cut it, inside there is a wound. So this is bhautika nam cha bhavana. Living entities, as in like human beings, and non-living entities as well. Everything is getting changed. And as the Kali increases, Srila Prabhupada was saying, and I'm sure you must have heard as well, for example, mango itself, the seed will be bigger than the pulp. Why is it happening? We need to think about it. So this is all, nature is getting affected. So Srila Vyāsadeva could see that. Bhautika nam cha bhavan. And then he lists six main things that Sud Goswami said. So he says, Shakti Hrasam. Shakti Hrasam Tat Kritam Cha. Yeah. Ashraddhan. Nihsatvan. Yeah. And then Nihsatvan. And then he says, Haras Ayu Harasita. Yeah. Harasita Ayusha. And then he says, Durbhaganscha, Durmedhan. So 6 qualities, 6 things he has listed prominently. So first is Shakti Hrasam. The energy. The energy doesn't mean physical energy. Physical energy is going down anyway. But the strength, the spiritual strength, the strength to keep the vows, the strength to keep our commitments, the strength of character, the strength of integrity, everything is going down. Yes, and you can see that happening around you. Yes. Then he says, Ashraddadhan, faithlessness. Faithlessness is increasing. People don't have faith now. People don't trust each other. That faith is dying. Nisatwan, the sattvic qualities are going because people are getting impatient. They want result right away. They want everything straight away. There is no patience. Yeah, even the Lord Krishna says, Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. I provide what you lack and I preserve what you have. But still the impatience is there that this will be taken away from me tomorrow. What will happen to tomorrow? I want this right now, etc. So, and you can experience all of these qualities. Yes. So these are happening with you as well, people around you. And then Durmedha, their intelligence is blunted. They are not able to make right decisions, because it is motivated, and motivation is selfishness. So your intelligence is blunted. Then Hrasit Ayusha, yeah, your lifespan is decreasing. People are short-lived now. Even though Kali Yuga, the life is 100 years, but now people are 60, 70. You know, by the time you're 75 or 80, you become invalid. If you are lucky, then you may survive, but otherwise people live as animals, you know, vegetables. That's not life. And then Durbhagash. Now, because of all of this, Durbhagya, unfortunate. So all of this were happening. So Srila Vyāsadeva, he could see that happening. Then he was always worried about for the welfare of the people. Then what did he do? He had already compiled the Vedas. Then he thought, maybe if people perform these religious activities, they might be able to protect themselves from these calamities. So he thought one Ved was too big. So he thought, let me split the Vedas into four sections. So he split the Ved into 4. Earlier it was only 1. So the 4 are Rig Ved, Sam Ved, Yajur Ved, and then Atharva Ved. And then he assigned his disciples to each of the Vedas. So Paila Rishi became the you can say the leader for Rig Ved. And then Sam Ved is Gemini Rishi. Then Yajur Ved is Vaishampayan Rishi, right? And then Atharva Ved is Angira Rishi. So like this, he split the Vedas into 4. But then he realized that in Kali Yuga, yeah, in the Skanda Purana, it is said that Kalau Shudra Sambhava. In Kali Yuga, everybody is a Shudra. We are born as Shudra. Yeah. Because we are Shudra, our senses are blunted. Our intelligence are blunted. All those 6 points that Srila Vyāsadeva thought, that I listed, that Sud Goswami ji mentioned. Durmedhan, yeah, Shakti Hrasam, Ashraddadhana, yeah, Nisatvan, all of those were happening. And then he realized even these 4 Vedas, everybody cannot follow, study these Vedas. Yeah, and then he says that, and specifically he mentioned Istri Shudra Dvija Bandhuna. Yeah, these three he says, Trai na Shruti Gochara. These three, Trai na Shruti Gochara. These three cannot, Shruti as in Vedas, these three cannot understand the Vedas. Then what did he do? Then he says, Iti Bharatam Akyanam. Yeah, Kripaya. Iti Bharatam Akyanam Kripaya Munina Kritam. Then he thought, let me write Mahabharata. Then he wrote Mahabharata, which is based on the Vedas, which is in sequence describing the Vedas, but in a simple term for the people like Shudra. All of us are Shudra. So he put that in which is Bharat, which is also called Mahabharata, or Mahabharata also called. So he wrote Mahabharata. Yeah, and he had also written Puranas. Yeah, Itihas. Mahabharata is an Itihas. Yeah, and Puranas. 18 Puranas he wrote. And for Itihas and Puran, he assigned Rom Harshan, who is father of Sut Goswami, who is reciting Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to Shonakari Rishi. So he assigned them. But even after assigning them, Vyāsadeva was feeling unsatisfied within himself. Yeah. He was feeling unsatisfied within himself, and then something came into his mind. And as he was thinking, he is contemplating, and he is saying, Kimva Bhagavata Dharma. Yeah. Kimva Bhagavata Dharma. Maybe that Bhagavat Dharma, yeah, I haven't described. Yeah, Prayen na prayen nirupita. So he said, Kimva Bhagavata Dharma na prayen nirupita priya paramhansanam ta evhi achyuta priya. So he was thinking in his mind that maybe I haven't described the Bhagavat Dharma. I have written all these scriptures, but I haven't described the Bhagavat Dharma, which is priya, which is dear to Paramhansa. All the Paramhansa, the devotees, exalted personalities. Nāraji is a Paramhans. Yeah, and it has come from the word hams. Hams and other is bug. Bagula. What is Bagula called in English? Anybody, Prabhuji? Buck. Okay, swan, and I think Hans is swan, and Bagula is called maybe buck or something like that. But I hope you understand. So there is a shlok. It is said that Hansa Shveto Baka Shveto. Yeah, Kim Bheda Baka Hansayo. Hans is also white, and the buck is also white. The Bagula. Hans is white, Bagula is also white. Yeah. What is the difference between Hans and Bagula? So he says, Nir Akshir Viveketu Hanso Hansa Bakovak. Nir Akshir Viveketu. Only a swan can differentiate. He can separate water from the milk. Yeah. He can separate water from the milk. So, and that is the quality that differentiates a Hans from a Bagula. So here, that's why, so these Paramhansa who are topmost devotee of the Lord, they enjoy, it is very dear to them to glorify Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's what Vyāsadeva was thinking, that Kimva Bhagavata Dharma, that maybe I haven't described that Bhagavat Dharma, na prayen na nirupita. Maybe I haven't described that, and which Bhagavat Dharma is very dear to Paramhansas, and also it is very dear to Achyut. And Achyut is another name for Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan Shri Krishna. So he said, maybe I haven't described that, and that is the reason for my despondency. Maybe I'm dissatisfied because of that. And as he was thinking to himself, as he was contemplating, then suddenly Shri Nārada appears there. Now Shri Nāradji appears there, and then it says, as Nāradji appears there, Vyāsadeva welcomed him, and Vyāsadeva offered him a nice seat. He offered him a seat, and then Vyāsadeva is sitting in front of Nāradji. And he says that Nāradji could read Vyasadeva's mind. Yeah. So then in the 5th chapter, now we are on to the 5th chapter. Then in the 5th chapter, first verse, now Sut Goswami says that Sukhasanam Upasinam. Yeah. Sukhasanam, as in Nāradji is sitting Sukh Purvak. He's sitting nicely in a relaxing position, and then Upasinam. Near to him, up as in close to him, is sitting Vyāsadeva ji. So Nārada is sitting, and close to him, Vyāsadeva ji is also sitting in front of him. Yeah, and then it says that Deva Rishi, which is Nārada ji, Deva Rishi, Praha, Vipra Rishi, who is Vyāsadeva ji. So Nārada ji spoke to Vyāsadeva ji, and then Nārada ji is holding Veena Pani Prasanna Iva. So he is holding his Veena in his hand, and he's smiling. Very important point. Now, just please focus on this one. So our acharyas have given their commentary, mentioned this, and other Maharajas has also commented on this. This is a very important point. So as a guru, or as a, you can say, senior, he is smiling. So his smile is not sarcastic. It is as if you, as a child, when you are worried about something, when you are thinking something, then suddenly, let's say, your parent comes, your mother or your father comes. What do they come? What do they do when they come to you? They see you sincerely thinking of something, to fixing something. Then you naturally smile. Oh, see, yeah, because the quality is they see you performing an endeavor. Yeah, Drishtva parishramam kritva. When they see you making an endeavor, they smile. And so this smile is with that mood that Nārada ji could see that, what is it that is missing, and what is the reason for Vyāsadeva ji's despondency. So Nārada ji made Vyāsadeva ji sit in front of him, and then he smiled. And Nārada ji smiled, and then Nārada ji started speaking to Vyāsadeva ji. And then he asked Vyāsadeva ji, so he addresses him. He says, Para Sharve Mahabhaga Bhavatah Kachid Atmana. Yeah. Paritushyati Sharira Atma Manas Evava. So he first addresses him as Parashar. I think I mentioned earlier. So Vyāsadeva ji's father's name is Parashar Rishi. And Parashar Rishi's father is Shakti Muni. Shakti Muni's father is Vasishtha Rishi. And Vasishtha ji's father is Brahmaji. Vasishtha ji is a mind-born son of, or Manas Putra of Brahmaji. And Nārada ji is also a Manas Putra of Brahmaji. Yeah. So that way, Nārada ji is senior to Vyāsadeva ji in that sense. So he is addressing him Parashar, O son of Parashar Rishi. Yeah. Bhavata, yourself, Kachid Atmana. So he asked him, and he asked him in a way that, are you satisfied with the work that you have done by identifying yourself with mind and body? So please think of this question, Prabhuji Mataji. So he is asking Vyāsadeva ji, and he's addressing him as son of Parashar. So he's addressing him by using his father's name, and he's saying, are you satisfied by the self-realization, right? By identifying yourself with mind and body. So just something, just to put some context. So there are three layers in our, you can say, our body, which is Mataji. One is you have the gross body, yeah, which is made up of the 5 Panchabhut that we see, right? Then the next body is the subtle body, yeah, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then the third is the soul, yeah. So really, our endeavor is to connect soul with the super soul. That's why we call Adhyatma Yoga, yeah. Adhyatma, Atma as in soul, and Adhyatma as in Adhikar, as in the proprietorship of the soul belongs to the super soul. Yeah. So far, these studies, what Vyāsadeva Nārada is saying is that your 2 studies are related to mind, which is the second layer, you can say, and the first layer, which is the body. So the third part, which is the self-realization, which is the soul. So he's saying the self-realization is not limited to, let's put it other way. The self-realization is not limited to understanding or satisfying the needs of the body or the mind. The self-realization is really and truly understanding the need of the soul and connecting soul with super soul. Yeah. So he asked him that question, are you satisfied? Yeah. And then we go to next question, and then slowly we'll bring this all together. And then he says, I can understand you have made all the perfect inquiries. Yeah, you have understood Vedas, and you have also written Mahabharata. Yeah, you have in the Mahabharata, you have described the Vedas in the sequence. You have done a very nice work in that. And then he also in the fourth shloka, then he says, Jigyasikam dhitam cha. Yeah, Brahma yattat sanatanam. Yeah, tathapi sochasya. Yeah, tathapi sochasya tasya eva akritarth prabhu. So what he's saying to him is that once again, so he's saying to him that that you have written Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, you have put the sequence of Vedas very nicely. But then he says and your jigyasitam, your inquiries, and dhitam. Jigyasitam, dhitam cha. So jigyasa is in questions, and dhitam is your understanding of Brahman, yeah, of impersonal Brahman. Because Prabhuji Mataji, the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra, which is the conclusion of the Vedas. Yeah, Shripad Adi Shankaracharya, he has written a lot, or about Vedanta Sutra. But normally at the outset, all of these analyses, they talk about the Brahman, the impersonal realization of the Supreme Personality of God. Yeah, so all these Vedanta Sutra, so it has done a very analytical analysis of this. So he's saying your inquiries are perfect, your understanding is perfect of Brahm, yeah, of Brahm, which is Yat Tat Sanatanam, which is Sanatan, which is eternal. Tathapi Shochasyatvam Akritarth Eva Prabhu. But even then you are dissatisfied. Even then you are, shochas. Even then you are, despondent, as if your work is undone. Why is that? So one important point I want to highlight here is Prabhuji Mataji, and you can note it down. So Vyāsadeva ji, who has himself compiled the Vedas, he has written Vedanta Sutra. So if the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra himself is not satisfied, then who else can be satisfied by reading the Vedanta Sutra? Sometimes people, stress the point, we should study the Vedanta Sutra, we should study the Brahman, the Brahman realization. But here, Srila Prabhupada comments that when the writer himself is not satisfied, then how can a reader who doesn't have proper guidance to study the Vedanta Sutra, how can the reader be satisfied when the author himself is not satisfied? Yeah. So he made that inquiry to our Nārada first asked these three questions to Vyāsadeva ji. Then Vyāsadeva ji now replies to Nārada ji. And Vyāsadeva ji tell Nārada ji, Na Atma Paritushyate me. My soul is not satisfied. Paritushyate. My soul is not satisfied. Yeah. Tad aham. Therefore, I request you, I am asking you. Tad aham, and then he addresses him that Brahma, that you are who is son of Brahmaji, yeah, who is born from Brahmaji. You please help me understand. Yeah. So therefore, I am asking you. Yes, he accepted that my soul is not satisfied, but I submit to you, and you who is son of Brahmaji. Yeah. And Brahma Bhutam, you are son of Brahmaji, and Brahmaji was self-born. So here our acharyas make an analogy, or they make a very nice, again commentary. So what Nārada addressed Vyāsadeva ji, he addresses as Parashar Rishi. Parashar, you are son of Parashar Rishi. And here in response, Vyāsadeva ji is addressing Nārada as, O son of Brahmaji. And Brahmaji who is self-born. Yes, who is not born from mundane father and mother, yeah, through their union. So he is self-born, Swambhu, and Nārada is directly his son, whereas Vyāsadeva himself. So the important point is, Prabhuji Mataji, Vyāsadeva straight away realized his position. He straight away realizing his position in front of Nārada. So he straight away submitting to him. He's realizing his position. He realizing his position that his birth, from the birth also, Nārada is high in a higher position than him. So he straight away submits to him. And then he says, Savai Bhavan Ved Samast Guhyam. He says, I know that, my dear sir, he's addressing to Naraji, Savai Bhavan Ved Samast Guhyam. You know all the top secrets. Right? And why do you know all top secret? He says, Upasate Purusha Purana. Because you are worshipping that Puran Purush, that supreme personality of God. So you see, so if somebody claims to know something, so the first qualification of knowing or getting that knowledge is that we are able to serve, or that we are worshipping the supreme personality of God. So Vyāsadeva is telling him, I know you are knower of everything because you are the worshipper of that Puran Purush. And that Puran Purush, he is saying, he is Vishwarup. He is this whole universe manifest from him. And then he says, Srajati Avati Atti. Yeah, Guner Asanga. And that supreme personality of Godhead who creates this universe. Srajati. Avati, who maintains this universe. Atti, who annihilates this universe. But he is still aloof from the modes of material nature. Gunair Asanga. Because, my dear sir, you are worshipping that supreme personality of Godhead. Yes, you are definitely knower of everything. And then he further goes on to glorify Naraji. And then he says, my dear sir, you are like a Vayu. You are like a sun ray, and you can go to all the 3 planetary systems. How sun enlightens or lights up all the 3 planetary systems. He says, you are like that. You light all the planetary systems. You are like air which penetrates everything. Yeah, Vayur iva Atma Sakshi. Like air penetrates everything, so like that you are Atma Sakshi. Yeah, and then he says, Paravare Brahmani Dharmata Vratai. So he says, you are Paravare. You know all the material, you know all the immaterial, you know past, you know future. So you know everything. Brahmani, you understand the Brahman. Yeah, Dharmata Vratai. You are resolute. Yeah, in your actions. And then he says, Snatasya me Snatasya me nyu na alam vichakshava. He says, now please accept me as your disciple. I surrender unto you. And please find the faults. See, please find the faults. Nyuna alam vichakshava. Yeah, Nyuna is in my faults. Yeah, please find the faults in the work that I have done. Please tell me my mistake. So this is very important section of this chapter, Prabhuji Mataji. Now Naradji knew what is the reason for his dissatisfaction, and Vyasadevji acknowledged that. And now this is how Vyasadevji is surrendering to Naradji, and only now his queries can be resolved. It is not as if, how we all can see, sometimes very often we go to each other and we call each other, and how sometimes hypocrisy, what they call it, right? But if you really want any solution, if you really want some right direction, then Prabhuji Mataji, this is a very important lesson for us. This is how we surrender. This is how we request, if we really asking for a mercy, if we really asking for the guidance. Yeah. Now Vyasadevji submits to Naradji, and Naradji now starts speaking. So Naradji now tells him, Bhavata Anudito Prayan. Yeah. So he tells him, now straight away Naradji gets to the point. He says, you haven't glorified Yasho Amlam. Bhavata Anudita Prayam. Yeah, Yasho Amlam. So you haven't glorified, or you haven't written about the glories of the supreme, or you haven't uncovered, or you haven't spoken about the glory of the supreme personality of Godhead. Yes, you have written Mahabharata. Yes, you have written all the Vedas, but you haven't described the glories of the supreme personality of God. Yen ev aso na tushed, yeah, tad darshanam khilam, manne tad darshanam khilam. So he says that philosophy, right? So Srila Prabhupada is very clearly, he articulates that philosophy. So any philosophy, any marg, you can go to Prabhuji Mataji. anything you want to choose, right? You can follow any mark you choose, but as long as it is glorifying the Supreme Personality of God. So the philosophy Nārada is saying that doesn't glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is considered inferior philosophy. Manyate manye tad darshanam khilam. So that philosophy is considered inferior. And then he says, yes, yatha, as you have, yatha dharma dayash chartha, yeah, muni varyah anukirtita, na tatha vasudevasya mahima hi anuvarnita. So he's saying to him, like you have anukirtita, like you have glorified, yeah, dharma adayash chartha, the four main principles, as we say, dharma, arth, kam, and moksha. And now he's coming specifically to the Mahabharata, not to even speak of Vedas. Yeah, so because in the second verse, in the third verse, Nārada said very clearly to him that yes, you have done a nice work of writing Mahabharata. And why did he write Mahabharata? We discussed in the previous chapter. Sud Goswami told that he wrote Mahabharata because Istri Shudra Dvij Bandhuna Traina Shruti Gochara. These three cannot understand the Vedas. Then what did he do? Iti Bharatam Akhyanam. Yeah. Iti Bharatam Akhyanam Kripaya Munina Kritam. By out of his mercy, he wrote Mahabharata. So now he is saying, yes, you have written a nice commentary on Vedas. You have written a nice sequential description in Mahabharata of the Vedas, but you haven't glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead as much as you should have. Yeah. So he's saying Anu Kirtita. Anu is again and again, and Kirtita is you have mentioned again and again. What? 4 dharmas. Dharma, arth, kam, and moksha. Similarly, you haven't glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anu varnita. Varnita is varnan, to glorify, you know, and then anu is again and again. So you haven't done that. That is the reason for your despondency. Now here, Vyāsadeva could say, no, I have glorified Lord Krishna. I've mentioned Krishna about the Vedas, but in the Vedas, in the Puranas, how specifically in the Puranas, Prabhuji Mata, he can say in the Padma Purana, I've discussed about Lord Krishna's pastime, but there he has mentioned Lord Krishna's glories are mentioned, but they are mentioned that you worship Lord Krishna and then it leads to some kind of gain, right? Which is connected to some way or other, these 4, you know, dharma, arth, kam, and moksha, or up to the point of moksha. Bhakti is not superior in them. So that is the point that we want to understand from this. So that is the reason Nārada has come to Vyāsadeva. Yes, he has glorified Krishna. In Mahabharata, he can say, yes, I've written about Krishna. But as you can see in Mahabharata also, there is a mention of Krishna's pastimes, but it still contains a lot of activities of our human life, right? There is not specifically focus on Lord Krishna's pastime. Whereas in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, when we study, you will see everything leads from every pastime, it leads to Lord Krishna's glorification. Even from Ajamil pastime, it leads to Lord Krishna's glorification. Even from Hiranyakashipu pastime, it leads to Lord Krishna's glorification. Yeah. Even with Gopis, pastime, it leads to Krishna's glorification. So everything culminates into glorification of Lord Shri Krishna. So that is the point. So this is the diagnosis, if you like, of the despondence, of the dissatisfaction of Vyāsadeva, that yes, you have written the Vedas, you have described Mahabharata, but somehow you haven't discussed the glories of Sri Krishna as much as you should have discussed. And in the Vedas, Prabhuji Mata, please don't take me wrong, there is even every word, every word is related to Krishna. Every akshar has Krishna's name. If you say ka, you go to Vedas, that also means Krishna. You say ka, it also means Krishna. But the problem is there is not enough people to teach us. We are not qualified to understand. When Lord Krishna is going from Hastinapur to Dwarka after the Mahabharata Yuddha, then we will see in future chapter. Then it is said that all these widows or the mothers or the sisters who have lost their husband or father or brother in the war, everybody got killed. except the 5 Pandavas and few other people on both the armies. So these widows, they were standing on the roof. And these widows, they were telling each other, as Lord Krishna is going on his chariot, so the widows or these women on the roof, they are greeting Lord Krishna and they are telling each other, Sava ayam sa kyanugit satkatho vedeshu guyeshu cha guye vadibhi ya ek isha jagadatma leelaya Sarajati avatiyati na sajatesmin. So what these Matajis are saying is that, oh Sakhi, oh friend, it is that Shri Krishna. Sava ayam Sakhya. Oh my dear friend, this is that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Vedeshu Guhyeshu cha Guhyavadi, who is described in the Vedas but secretly. Guhya, right? Guhyavadi bhi, only Guhyavadi, people who can understand these Guhya pastimes, who are qualified to read this, only they can understand. Vedeshu Guhyeshu cha Guhyavadi. Yah ek ish, he is the only controller. Jagadatma Leelaya, to perform his pastime. So this universe is to perform his pastimes. What does he do? Srajati, he creates. Avati, he maintains. Atti, he annihilates, but he doesn't get connected. Na sajjatesmin, but he is not attached. He is still aloof from that. See, so those Matajis could understand that in the Vedas, it is only him who is described as Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna says himself, Vedesh sarve ahamev ved, that I am to know, but we cannot know that. So Srila Vyāsadeva saw that analogy and he wrote Mahabharata. But still, he did not describe the glories of the Supreme Personality of God. That is the point I'm trying to come to. He had written about these 4 dharmas, like I said, dharma, artha, kam, and moksha. You perform some religious activities to fulfill your desires, which is kam, yeah, dharma. So you perform religious activities and then you get some earth, then you satisfy your desires, and then after that, you plan for moksha. Moksha is in somebody say, your next life. At the most, it talks about going to the heavenly planets. That's it. But there is no plan to go back to Supreme Personality of God. There is no emphasis on the bhakti part, on glorifying the Supreme Personality of God. Yeah, so that is what was missing. Yeah, and then Srila Nārada, he further goes on, and then he sort of now starts chastising Vyāsadeva. He says, you have written so much literature, but then he says the literature which does not glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he calls it Tadvayasam Tirtham, or the poetry or the literature which does not glorify the Supreme Personality of God. He says Tadvayasam Tirtham. It is considered a place of pilgrimage for cows. Right? So if at all you are assembling somewhere and you are not discussing Krishna's pastime, remember this line. This is spoken by Nārada. Tad vayasam tirtham ushanti na tatra hansa niramanti usikshana. Yeah, tad vayasam tirtham. So that place or that literature is called place of pilgrimage for the crows, where na hansa niramanti, the paramhansas, the swans, yes, they don't even go there. They don't even even look at that or look at them. Right? So how can you get their mercy if we are still behaving like with the crow's mentality? So he's chastising Vyāsadeva ji now, that yes, you have written, but he's going to that extent. And then he says that yes, you have written so nicely, it is so nicely Sanskrit, grammatically so good, but then he says, even if you have written something which is grammatically not very good, but namani ananta Yasho ankitaniya shrinvanti gayanti girananti sadhava. But if you have written something and it is not grammatically well formed, that is fine. But namani, yeah, yasho ankitani, yeah, it has the name of Lord Krishna on it. Yeah, I tell you, very nice past time. I think somebody once wrote an article for Back to Godhead magazine, or I think it was when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was there. So please excuse me. I think, but one of the either Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, somebody wrote an article, and it was sent to the editorial team to check, and then the matter went to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada said, if the article has mentioned Krishna's name or Mahaprabhu's name many times, then pass it. See, so there is no grammatical check, right? But namani ananta seyasho ankitaniya, that Anant, that supreme personality of Godhead, if his yash, if his glories, if his pastimes are written on each and every word, or if each and every word is describing the pastime of the Lord, that is fine, doesn't matter grammatically. That literature, now what happens is, Shravanti hears, Gayanti they speak, and Grananti, as in they apply in their lives. Grahana, yeah. Who? Sadhava. All the sadhus, all the good devotees, they hear, they sing. So what they hear, they sing the same thing. And what they sing, they apply on themselves. Shrinvanti Gayanti Grananti Sadhava. So this is what Nārada tells about. Okay, you have written all of these scriptures, you have written Veds, Puran. Imagine, I think I showed you with the table last time, how many number of shlokas, thousands and thousands of shlokas. If you start counting in Mahabharata, in Puran, in Vedas, etc. But if it is not glorifying Shri Krishna, then this is what Nārada thinks of that literature. But then he goes on to say to him, that's okay. But then you have written that, and this is, and then he comes to the point of people like us. Yeah, Nash karmanya. Yeah, Nash karmani, as in when we do karma without any fruitative motive, without any this thing. But he says, if somebody is doing any action without any motive, without any benefit, but if it is lacking achyut varjitam, yeah, if it does not have Lord Krishna's, Lord Bhagwan Achyut, who is infallible, if it does not relate to that, even then, so then there is no good reason, or there is no purpose for performing those kind of actions. You know how we sometimes say, I'm completely detached, I'm performing these actions, I don't want any fruitive result. If you go and set up a charitable hospital, if you go and set up a food distribution, etc., but if it is not related to Lord Shri Krishna Prabhuji Mataji, then it is just a labor only. It is like in the second chapter, Sud Goswami told them that Shrama Evhi Kevalam, yeah, Vishwaksen Swanutishthasya Dharmasya Vishwaksena Kathasuya Na Utpadayed Yadi Ratim Shrama Evhi Kevalam. If you are saying, I'm situated in my dharma, I'm performing all my duties very nicely. As a householder, as a father, I'm bringing food on the table. I'm going earning enough money. I'm looking after my family. But if it doesn't generate your desire, your affection, your attraction to hear the katha of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it's saying, Shrama Evi Kevalam. It is just a labor. It is no good. Yeah. So now Nārada is telling him that, if it does not have Bhagavan Achyut's pastimes, then it is no good. And then he tells him that you have a very nice vision. You have a great vision. You are a dharmavrat, right? You have understood everything so nicely. But then he tells Vyāsadeva ji that a literature or a work, which is not related to Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is not linked with the Lord Krishna's pastime, then he says that mind, or as a living entity, if you are performing those activities, they are always agitating. Those activities are disturbing, and I'm sure you can often feel in your work environment, in your personal situation, there is always anxiety, there is always disturbance. So Nārada says that those type of activities are always disturbing. It is like a boat parked but not tied to the boat anchor. Then what will happen? As the winds come, the boat will dwindle. So similarly, he's saying you perform these activities, but they are always disturbing because they are not tied to the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are not linked somehow or the other to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And now he just goes very heavy on Vyāsadeva. Now he says, Jugupsitam, what you have done is most abominable. Jugupsitam dharma krite nushasata. So he says, Jugupsitam, most abominable. Because dharma krite anushasata, in the name of religion, in the name of religious activities, that anushashan, these rules and regulations that have been set up, because he says swabhava raktasya mahan vyathikrama, because these living entities by swabhav, by nature, they want to enjoy. By nature, Prabhuji Mataji, our senses are so blunted. When Gajendraji is praying to Supreme Personality of God, he says, oh my dear Lord, I don't want to live because these senses, my senses are so blunted. You know, we have these 5 knowledge acquiring senses, but are we really acquiring the knowledge from the senses? You know, our eyes are meant to see, always see the lotus feet of Krishna, but our eyes want to look other things. Our ears are supposed to hearing the Krishna Katha, but they want to hear all the rubbish things. Our tongue is supposed to glorify Krishna or to honor the prasadam. But what do we do with this tongue? You go in the marketplace, you see all kind of foods, and then your mouth starts watering. I tell you, very simple test. You don't have to go to anywhere. Just every day walk in the marketplace. If by looking at those, at those carts, at those, what do you call those snack shops, if the water comes in your mouth, then your senses are still attached to them. You don't need anyone to tell you. You can test yourself. And I would say this is a very nice exercise. This is how you can try and control. The moment you feel that, start chanting holy names. Start praying to the Supreme Lord that when will that time come? When will these senses, these blunted senses, when will I will be, desiring to honor the prasadam? When will I be desiring to glorify you, my dear Lord? So you can do a self-test. So that's what Nārada is saying to Vyāsadeva, that what you have performed is most abominable task. Mahan Vyathikrama. This is a great, Vyathikrama is again reversal. Vyathikrama, you can say, or crossing the boundaries, crossing the limit. Because he's saying, because in the name of religion, you have prescribed these actions, so they will use that. They will use these to keep performing these abominable actions. So what you have done is very bad. Yeah. So he says dharma, he says yad vyakto dharma, right? In the name of religion, whatever you have spoken, that will become a rule now. And you all know Prabhuji Mata, right? That's our nature is. We always try to filter the instruction to our liking, right? We always, curtail. We always cut the instruction. If instruction is given something very long, we just cut it out. To suit to our personal. Yeah? And that's the reason he's saying that what happens is na manyateta sanivaranam jana. The prohibition, the jana, the people in general, they don't want to follow the prohibitive instructions. You have written Mahabharata. Now let's take, for example, how many of you know that Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata? Do we ever desire to read Bhagavad Gita? It is part of Mahabharata. You all have seen Mahabharata on TV. There is new serial coming on Mahabharata. I knew one friend, and they were telling us the new serial is so good, and etc. etc. But where is Bhagavad Gita? All they watching is that, those anxious moments, those fights, Arjun chastising him, Duryodhan doing this, Dhritarashtra doing this, Bhishma doing this. But what about Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita should be on the top. So that's what Nārada is telling Vyāsadeva. What you have done is most abominable. Because they will only pick up the things that they like. Why? Because Swabhava Raktasya. This is their Swabhava, Nārada. This is their Swabhava, Vyāsadeva. You haven't missed that. Right? And then he goes on to, then he further tells him that what happens normally is, now he's categorizing, there are 2 types of people. He's saying one category of people who have completely given up the fruitive activities. Or the people, like I said, who walk in the marketplace and they still don't feel water in their mouth when they see somebody selling golgappa, chaat papri, etc., etc., or jalebi, whatever is your favorite, snacks. If their mouth is not watering, then somewhat you can say they are able to control themselves. So he's saying those people, they can understand. Anant parasya, Vibho Anant parasya. This Lord who is Vibhu, we are Anu, they can understand. Right? You know how that famous verse. Venu Vibhushit Karat Navnir Dabhat Purnendu Sundar Mukhat Arvind Netrat Pitambarat Krishnat Param Tat Kimapi Aham Najan. Yeah. So if you speak this in front of someone normal, they won't understand. Pitambara, I mean, they are not able to relate. When you're saying Pitambara, they are not able to visualize Lord Krishna wearing that nice silken yellow garment. So their mind hasn't gone, or their consciousness hasn't gone to that level. Navnir Dabhat. When you see the clouds, do you say, looking up the sky, do you say, oh my Lord Krishna, Abha is like this? He is Sham Sundar? Do we say that? Because our consciousness is not at that level. All we can say is, oh, it's about to rain. Right? So Nārada is telling Vyāsadeva that those who have na pravritte sukham, who are not involved in the sense pleasure, those people, those who have passed that, for them, they can understand Vibho, they can understand that perspective or that Supreme Personality of God. But for others who are still involved in the fruitive activities, for them Nārada tell Vyāsadeva that you should please write. You should write the pastimes of the Lord. Okay, so let me further simplify this. So, or let me give an example. I was talking to one Mataji. She's involved in performing. She's doing some kind of counseling, and she said to me, Prabhu, sometimes people ask all sort of questions. How do we respond to them? They are very challenging. So I told her that Mataji, you can categorize them in three categories. One is people who can straight away understand, who can understand the Krishna Tattva, who can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are ready. Like Srila Prabhupada said, we are not ready to read the 10th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam yet. We have to read from canto 1 to canto 9. And then it is like for 9 months you are in the womb of your mother, and then you are ready to come out. So you can take that analogy. You first read all the 9 cantos, then you are in a position to appreciate the Leelas performed in 10th canto. Otherwise, you will not understand it. Why? Because you will start applying your logic. You will say, how a 6-day boy, a 6-day child can kill Putna? Your logic comes in. When you start talking of gopis, devotion to Lord Krishna, straight away your mind will go into the physical body. You will visualize 2 physical bodies. So we are not ready yet, right? So there is one category who can appreciate that. They are Paramhans. So there is no one around us. Then the second category is people whom you can talk the pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. By hearing the pastimes, they will develop that love and affection. They will develop an appreciation and understanding of the glories, right, of the Supreme Personality of God. And the third category is they cannot understand any of these two. They are still at the body level. So to explain things to them, you have to sometimes take the rude examples. Like I was telling you the other day, once Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan and he was walking. He was on a morning walk. As he was on a morning walk, suddenly a pig ran out of the muddy water there. A puddle was there. A pig came out and started running. And Srila Prabhupada stopped. And his disciples were with him. And Srila Prabhupada stopped and told his disciples. He said, what is that library in New York on 42nd Street? He said, in that library, there are thousands of books. But what are those thousands of books about? They are talking about sex, how to have good sex, how to understand sex, how to do this, how to do this. And he said, if you want to know that, look at this pig. This pig hasn't studied any book or anything, but he is naturally endowed with all those qualities. If you prefer that, in your next life, you can become a pig. Yeah. So sometimes it's, we don't understand. So there are different levels, right? So here Nārada is telling Vyāsadeva that some people cannot understand they cannot appreciate that supreme position of Supreme Lord. So for them, you should write the pastimes. Yeah, I hope that is clear now. So that's what in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Prabhuji, Mataji, there are these various pastimes. Through the pastimes, we can start an appreciation. We can relate ourselves. Yeah, so that is why you see these various pastimes, and they are different. You can see Daksh Prajapati, how he got so puffed up, false ego. So we will read all of that, and how they. So going back to Nārada tells Vyāsadeva that you should write that, and he says that you are very intelligent. You have understood the whole things. And then he further goes on to say that even in this, he says, in this material world, right, if somebody, tyaktva swadharma charanam bhujam hare, if somebody leaves his religious duties, like the varnashram duty, and if he surrenders to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and somehow he falls down, apakva pato tatar, if he is not fully mature and he falls down, then Nārada says still there is no loss for him. If he falls down, there is no loss for him. Whereas the material duties, who is always performing material duties, the fruitive activities, he's saying they are painful from the beginning to the end. Yeah, they are painful from the beginning to the end. So he says, Vyāsadeva, you please do that. And then he asks, then what is the other conclusion? Then Nārada tells him, Tasyeva heto prayateta kovido nalabdhateya brahmitam upri adha talabdhate dukkavadnana sukham kalena sarvatra gabhir ramhasa. Then he says, Tasyeva heto prayateta kovido. The intelligent people endeavor for only that which is not easily attainable from the topmost planet to the lowermost planet. Right? And what is that? That is the devotional service to the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says very clearly, A Brahma Bhuvna Loka Punar Avartino Arjuna. Yeah? Mam Upatyatu Konteya Punar Janma Vidyate. From the lowermost planet to the Brahma Loka. Right? Punar avartino Arjuna. Arjun, they have to come back. But if you come to me, punar janma vidyate, you don't have to take another birth. So that's what Nārada is saying, from the lowermost planet to the topmost planet. Brahmana, Brahmito, if you go up and down, life after life, in different spaces of life, the most difficult thing that you cannot get is the devotional service to the Lord. And then he says, what to speak of the sukh? He says, as with the time, miseries come. Do you ask for miseries? No, nobody asks, but miseries come with the time. He says, as the miseries come with the time, similarly, the happiness will also come with the time. But what will not come is the devotional service to the Lord. So that's what the intelligent person work for that. That's what they perform hard work for that. So that is why all our activities should be channeled to perform or to glorify the Supreme Personality of God. So like this, he instructs Vyāsadeva. And then he goes on to say that in the 22nd verse, so then he tells him that Pumsasya tapse shrutavo shrutasya va. Tapa, now he's concluding these instructions. So he says, Pumsasya tapse shrutasya va. Yeah, Shruta. If you have studied the Vedas, then the purpose of that is Uttam Shloka Vardhana. Yeah, that this should culminate into the glorification of the Supreme Lord. If you are performing any austerity, it should link to the glorification of the Supreme Personality of God. If you are performing yagna ceremony, it should link to the glorification of the Supreme Personality of God. If you are suktasya, if you are chanting those hymns and prayers, they are for the glorification of Supreme Personality of God. If you got intelligence, that is for the Supreme Personality of God. Dattaya, if you are performing any charity, that should be linked to the Supreme Personality of God. So like this, he is saying that all the actions that we are doing, that should be linked to the Uttama Shloka Varnana. Yeah, Yad Uttama Shloka Varnana. So there now he concludes and he sort of concludes his instructions, and then he goes on to give his own personal example. By the way, do you know Nārada in his previous life, he was a Dasiputra. Okay. So he was a Dasiputra, now he gives his own example. Yeah. And he tells Vyāsadeva that Aham Puratita Bhavo Abhava. In the previous Kalp, which is the last, in the previous day of Brahmaji, he is going to, now Nārada in this Kalp, he will stay for the whole Kalp. He will be there for the whole Kalp. Right? In the previous Kalp, he's saying, I was son of a maid servant. I was a Dasiputra. Yeah. And he's saying, while I was Dasiputra, one time, and he did not have his father at that time. He didn't have his father at all at that time. I think father had passed away, but him and his mother. So his mother was a maid servant, and he said during the Chaumasa, yeah, Chaturmasa that we just celebrated, I think, and I explained to you, that is the time called rainy season in the autumn season. So during that time, all these traveling sannyasi, they stay at one place. Because of rain, they don't travel. That is the reason, right? And when they're staying at one place, they are performing austerities because they are not traveling. So they take these vows that this month, I'm not going to take this, like you all performed, Chaturmasa this year, last year, many of you. Yeah. So similarly, they perform all this austerity because they say we are stationed at one place, we should increase our austerity. So at that time, they were stayed there. And then Nārada's mother, she was a maid servant. She had the duty of cleaning the ashram. She was cleaning the place, and Nārada, as a young child, he will also play around in the ashram. But Nārada says, from the very young age, I was not very talkative. I was not a naughty person. I did not enjoy playing the sports. I will talk only when I'm asked to speak. And he was very quiet, very calm child from the very beginning. And he says, in that ashram, then those Rishi Munis were staying there. One day, he said, when they were there, with their permission, he got to eat one of the remnant of their food from the plate that was put to be washed. So Nārada requested them, can I eat? Nārada in his previous life, he said, can I eat that remnant? So Nārada picked up that remnant and he ate that. And he says, just by eating that remnant, his consciousness became pure and pure. Until then, he wasn't inclined to the devotional sense. So very important. So the qualities that he's saying is, he was calm. He did not like sports. He was less talkative, but there was no devotional point at this as yet in his life. Yeah. But then he says, once he ate the remnant of food of those rishis, then he started feeling a natural love towards Lord Shri Krishna. And then those Rishi Munis, when they assemble there, among themselves, they will be discussing the pastimes of Lord Krishna. And by hearing their pastimes, he's saying, he developed a natural, very important word, he developed a natural affection, natural attraction for Lord Shri Krishna, for more and more hearing. Yeah, Ruchiram Navam Navam, as it is said. Yeah. The more you hear, the more and more taste comes out, right? It's like you eat something today you feel a different taste. Tomorrow you feel a different taste. Next day, but this taste is at a spiritual level. He hears one pastime, he has different realization. Same pastime, another realization. So that's how he was getting more and more and more. And then he started serving those rishis. When the Chaturmasya was about to end, then those rishis, as they were leaving, so Nārada says, they gave him the instruction, those secret instruction, which were spoken by Lord Krishna himself. And when Nārada got those instructions, he said he started meditating on those instructions. And as he was meditating on those instructions, then his love and his dedication towards Shri Krishna increased further and further and further. And then he says, by doing that process, through contemplation, through chintayat, yeah, through thinking of those pastimes again and again, he slowly gained more understanding of the Supreme Personality. He did not study any Vedas or anything. So he then going to the second last verse of this chapter, in the verse number 39, then he says, Swa Nigamam. Nigam is called Vedas. So he says, I got an understanding of all the Vedas. Swa Nigamam Brahman. Brahma, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, I got that understanding of the Vedas. And then he says, Adan me jnanam aishwaryam. Yeah. Swasmin bhavam cha Keshava. And then Lord Shri Keshav, Lord Shri Krishna gave me the jnana. So I got that knowledge. He gave me that transcendental knowledge. Yeah. He got the transcendental knowledge. And after that, getting the knowledge, then he says, then I also got Aishwarya. Aishwarya is opulence. This opulence is not what we speak of our opulence, having a house and car, etc. No. He got Ashta Siddhi. Ashta Siddhi is he can appear from here, he can disappear from here, he can produce anything from everything, he can change anything from everything. He got all the opulence. What is our opulence? We can deposit money in the bank, take money out of the bank. His opulence, he can create a bank. And then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that opulence is dormant opulence. He had that opulence, but he never used that opulence. It is not that if he was going around and showing off those siddhis, those siddhis, that opulence to enter. No, then because he was like that, then what he got, the next thing is Swa Asmin Bhavam Cha Keshava. Then he was able to develop that bhav, that natural love, you know, that what we studied as part of Nectar of Instruction, Raganuga Bhakti. So he got that spontaneous love. The moment he hears the name of Krishna, those pastimes will come into his mind straight away. So he developed that love, that kind of bhav. Yeah. And he got that. Yeah. So, and then he concludes by saying, this is what today's verse, then he's saying that, Tvamapi abhadra Shrutavi Shrutam Vibho. Tvamapi adhabra Shrutavi Shrutam Vibho. Samapatiye navidam bubutsitam. Samapatiye navidam bubutsitam. Prakhyahi dukhe muhurardite atmana. Prakhyahi dukhe muhurardite atmana. Sanklesh nirvanamushunti nanyatha. Sanklesh nirvanamushanti nanyatha. So now he finally concludes his instruction. So he tells, now he has spoken from his own example, how he got the association of those Paramahansa, how by serving them, he got their mercy. They, in the mercy, as a mercy, they instructed him. How he developed that natural love for Shri Krishna. When he developed that natural love and affection for Shri Krishna, then he got the Gyan, then he also got the opulences, and then he also developed that Bhav, Raganuga Bhav, right? He developed that. So, right, his story is, he was a Dasi Putra, he was a Shudra. We are all a Shudra, Prabhuji Nate. Kalau Shudra Sambhava, Skand Purana says. Yeah, Manu Maharaj says, Janmana Jayate Shudra. Yeah, Sanskarat Bhaved Vipra. Veda Pathad Bhaved. Sorry. Janmana Jayate Shudra. Samskarat Bhaved Dvija. Veda Pathad Bhaved Vipra. Yeah, and then Brahma. Yeah, and then by knowing the Brahma, yeah, Brahma Janati iti Brahmana. Yeah, so by birth we are all Shudra. No matter whether you are born into a Brahman family, like a surname Brahman, but we are all Shudras. Right? From the samskara, we become Dvija, which then we accept, like you take initiation. That's when you become a Dvija, as in twice born, second birth. In your second birth, your father is your spiritual master and your mother is Vedic knowledge. So you become a Dvija. Yeah. In the second chapter, Sud Goswami is saying, Atah Pumbhir Dvija Shrestha Varnashrama Vibhagasha. Yeah. Dvija Shrestha. So he's addressing those Brahmanas as Dvija Shrestha. So they were all initiated. They are all taken shelter of a guru. So that is a Dvij. Shrestha. They're the topmost. Yeah. And then the third thing is Veda Pathad Bhaved Vipra. If you study the Vedas, then you become a Vipra, right? And then by studying the Vedas, if you are able to connect to the Supreme Brahman, if you are able to understand your connection with the Brahman, then Brahma Janati iti Brahmana. Then you are real Brahman, Prabhuji Mataji. Otherwise, having a surname Brahman doesn't mean we are a Brahman. Yeah. So that's what so Naraji is telling from his own past life that he was a Shudra in his previous life. But even though he was born in a Shudra life, he did not have any material opulence, he did not have any means, but he was still able to gradually progress into the spiritual path. And in this life, he became Nārada. Nārada means Narayana Dadati iti Nārada. He who can get you to Lord Shri Narayana, he is Nārada. You can also become Nārada in your next life. Don't worry about if this planet is taken. There are many, many planets. Lord Krishna can transfer you to those planets and you can become Nārada as well. So this is what Lord Naraji's instruction to Vyāsadeva. Yes, you have written Mahabharata. You have elaborated the understanding of Atman. You have like the self, the mind and the body, how to take care of the body, how to perform this dharma, artha, kam, moksha. Yes, Vyāsadeva, you have done all of that, but he's saying that is very abominable. See, straight away, this is the job of a guru. If you have a guru, and you go as a disciple in front of that guru, says, "Oh, you are very nice," and guru starts praising you, and you also start glorifying guru. That is not a guru disciple. Guru is like a doctor. He's like a chikitsak. When we do Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. So Shalakaya means surgery. Shalakaya is literally for surgery. He does the surgery. That is the Guru. So Naraji chastised Vyāsadeva. And by the way, both are incarnation of Supreme Personality of Godhead. We discuss in the 3rd chapter. We discuss all the incarnations. With Naraji's 3rd incarnation that we read, and Vyasadeva's 17th incarnation of the 22 that we discussed. But here they are, he's being chastised by his senior. And he's giving his own example that I was a Shudra in my previous life. So that's what he's saying. Prakyahi dukkher muhur ardita atmana. Oh dear Vyasadeva, prakya, akhyan karo. Go write down, go elaborate on the glories of the Supreme Personality of God. Because sanklesh nirvanam, to get rid of all these clashes. In English, you can say actually clashes. To get rid of all these kleshas, Prabhuji Mataji, whether you are Vidam, whether you are intelligent, Vidam Bubhutsitam, if you are greatly intelligent, greatly learned, and you still have a hunger, Bubhutsitam, if you have a hunger to know about Lord, Supreme Lord, then he says, this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, write the glories of the Lord. It can fulfill their desire. At the same time, if you are going through this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, you are being muhur arditana. Ardit word means you are being crushed. In our life, we say sometimes I'm being crushed at my work. I'm being crushed by my family members, right? So that crushing is happening. Muhur, again and again. You are being crushed again and again. So he says, dukkher prakyahi dukh muhur ardita atma. So those living entities who are again and again being crushed by this material mode of natures, by their etc., whoever way, by rebirth or anything, right? For them also, please write. Please prakyahi, please compile. So this answers the question, Kutah sanchoditah Krishna kritvan samhitamani. That was the question. Why, on whose inspiration did Vyasadeva ji write Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? So Prabhuji Mataji, Naraji chastised Vyasadeva ji. He told that you write this, and this is that Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam which can uplift the knowledgeable people, the learned class, the good 4 class that Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, and the bad 4 class also. It can benefit everyone. Otherwise, he says, na annatha, there is no other way. Yes, harir namev kevalam kalau na asti eva gatir annatha. So 3 times it is said. 3 times means all the 3 miseries. Adi devik, adhyatmik, adi bhautik. That is why we repeat 3 times. All the 3 miseries will be destroyed. So there is no other way. So Naraji telling Vyasadeva ji, please write. and please elaborate on the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So with that, Prabhuji Mataji, I'll stop here. And we have gone 7:35 now. So please, if anyone has any questions or comments, please ask.